The training is intended to give you an introduction. I'll try to do it in an hour. I have to skip some slides because this one is created to last 90 minutes, so I have to make it a little bit quicker. So I'm going to skip a few things. If you have any questions, please just raise your hand, and it's always okay. To introduce quickly. The reason for us to start looking into Spark, and Spark is a way of organizing in autonomous teams, is mostly this. 2 years back, we've asked a large group of colleagues whether they thought if Bol.com would be twice as large as it is right now, if we would still be equally as effective or innovative. And everybody who scores green in this chart is positive about this question. So it's not many people, and if you're at marketing, then you're not very positive maybe in general. I don't know, they have a really low score here. And this is something that worries me, and it worries all the people who started Spark 2 years back. Why is it that if an organization grows, that you automatically become slower and it gets harder to get stuff done? And why is this necessarily the case? Is that sort of the destiny of all growing organizations, or is there an alternative? And we hope so. So we've created the Spark way of working to more or less prove that there is an alternative to this, that you can grow and still remain effective and innovative as an organization. And that's all good and well from the viewpoint of the entire organization, but what does that mean for one person? When Bol.com was a lot smaller than it was now. When I started 10 years ago, it was 150 people, and it was really easy to see what your own personal unique contribution was to the ultimate goal of the company, and that's really fun, and it gives a lot of inspiration to see how you directly contribute to an inspiring goal. And that gets a bit more fuzzy as the organization grows and grows, because you become more and more it becomes a very complex machine that is very hard to understand completely, and it's even harder to understand what exactly the benefit is of your work every day. So that Spark is intended to bring some of that back, to make it easier to see how you contribute to inspiring goals as a person. And that's also important for Bol.com, because we need to be fast as a business. The market is changing very quickly. We have a bunch of competitors who are doing really, really well. So we cannot afford as a company to become slow, and we need to get the most out of all the talent that we have in all the 1,500 people that work at Bol.com today. Each and every one of them has a unique talent, and it's in the interest of the company to make sure that we can get as much as we can from all that talent. SCORE is a program in merchandising and sourcing and marketing. So a lot of teams in that part of the organization are starting using Spark. So some of the parts of this presentation will explain a bit about the SCORE program. So what's the main...
Where's your position within Bol.com?
Yeah. I have actually 2 positions or roles, and I'll get into roles a bit as we move along. And one of them is in logistics, so I'm in the BFC project right now. So I'm a project manager, and I'm responsible for part of the BFC project. And I'm a Spark coach, and together with Rens and some other people started Spark 2 years ago. So we develop the method, and we actively coach new teams, and we give trainings. Good question.
Did you develop the method, or does it have a history in other companies?
Yeah, it has a history. It's based on an American method called holacracy, and that's big at, for instance, Zappos is a very big user of that, that method. But we've changed it a little bit to make it fit better for Bol.com and the Bol.com culture. So that's why we give it. We invented a new name for it, and we've changed a few bits around. So the most important principles of Spark is that teams work with clear purpose and clear goals. So teams an important principle for Spark is that everyone has not only a personal goal, but in the team that you work in, it's very clear why you should get up in the morning, take your bike or car and get over here. What's the inspiring goal that you want to achieve with your team? What's the reason the team is there in the first place? And try to give that clarity as much as possible. And in addition to giving that clarity, teams are trusted to handle their own work, and also persons, people at Bol.com are trusted to handle their own work. So autonomy is a very important principle in trust in Spark. Spark is a method for organizing in self-organizing teams. So teams get a clear goal, but they get the freedom to determine on their own what the best way is to organize your team to get that goal done. And you can do that as a team. So that's no longer only the responsibility of one manager or director or team lead, but you do it as a team. Spark is based on the lean startup principles or agile principles of learning by doing. So try to keep the design to a minimum, make sure that you are able to build fast, learn fast, and iterate fast. So we do that a lot in software development, but you can use the same principles in organization development. So finding out what the best way is to organize your team, you can either design that for 3 months and make sure you do it right at once, or you could just experiment a bit and try a few times and get some learning loops going on. And it's the second thing that Spark is based on. And the last one is radical transparency. So if you want to be trusted to be able to handle your own work, then you also have the responsibility to be transparent on how your work is moving along, or if it's not moving along very well at the moment, then maybe you need some help. So autonomy, responsibility, and transparency all go hand in hand in the Spark way of working. I'm going to skip a few of these. So what we're trying to do is to move from the, let's say, a bit more traditional hierarchy that you find in many large organizations, and try to move a bit more towards a network of teams. And if you look at how Bol.com has been organized over the last couple of years, then you can draw inside this hierarchy a number of functional departments or even silos. So examples of that can be operations, marketing, IT. So what we're trying to do is to organize less in a functional way, where the main focus is your function. I work for operations or logistics, or I work for marketing, or more towards teams that have a shared and common goal. And in that team you can have multiple disciplines. So we're trying to create more and more teams where you get a combination of, let's say, somebody from logistics, somebody from marketing, somebody from business development, to reach the goals for, let's say, last mile. This is also the reason why the SCORE program is merging the marketing and merchandising departments. So you get more disciplines, more people that are needed to reach those goals. We're not exactly changing this part of the organization. So we're offering a dual structure where, on the one hand, everybody who works at Bol.com is member of some functional department, but can at the same time be a member of one or more multidisciplinary teams with clear goals. At IT it's a bit different. In IT we did this change in 2009 and 10, and actually if you look at the IT organization, then you will not be able to recognize a lot of this anymore. So we've almost completely moved from the left to the right picture. That's something we're trying to do in the business side of Bol.com as well. So what changes? Teams can be formed more easily from different departments, so it's easier to think across the lines of departments. You're organized more towards goals, and the main principle is that it's more in an autonomous way. So there's more self-organization, there's more trust for people to handle their own work. The Spark way of working or way of organizing is growing rapidly within Bol.com. We've started this 2 years ago, and it's at the moment, I think we're a bit larger than this right now. It's about 460, 70, I think, people using Spark. It's about 60 teams. So it's growing really fast, and we're growing it as a sort of an ink stain. It's a couple of teams at the time, and then some more, and some more, and some more. So it's not sort of a top-down, all-in change at one point. We're trying to make it grow more or less like a movement. We're always offering to help coaching in Spark. We're always waiting for teams to ask us to help them. So nobody is obliged to use this way of working. It's a free choice for teams. These pictures are all Spark coaches. We've started with some help from outside, but over the last 2 years we've trained internal Spark coaches like Rens and myself. So it's internal bol.com people that help new teams to learn working with Spark by doing training like this, but also by coaching inside of Spark meetings when you start. And we still have some help from outside consultants. These guys are Koen and Bob, and they're helping us mainly in the SCORE program right now. So what does it mean to do Spark in your team? How does it really work? There's some basic concepts in there. Spark Circles is a team. A team in Spark terms is called a circle. And it's more or less, it's a different way of looking at things. We're trying to move away a little bit from hierarchical thinking and go more into a network model. Circles fit better there. There's no high or low. It's a better way of drawing a flat organization structure. And how does that look then? There is still some hierarchy in the Spark way of working, only it's not the same. It's not a functional hierarchy, it's a hierarchy of goals. So you're trying to move from a very broad goal that we might have for entire bol.com organization. We want to be the #1 shopping platform in Netherlands and Belgium. That's the broadest goal that we have. But we also have some, let's say, smaller goals. So in our commercial operations, we want to offer a fitting choice, and we want to have a fitting assortment of products for the right price. That's one of the important bol.com goals, but it's not all of it, of course. So this is a bit of a smaller goal. It fits inside of the broader goal. And inside of that, we might have an even smaller goal that's more focused on, let's say in this example, the cluster of daily needs. So that's a cluster of shops within bol.com. And they have a different goal than some of the other clusters. Because they want to really get to a channel shift of having customers buy more online. Whereas, let's say, in a cluster of books, online penetration is already much higher. So they have a different. So you still have a hierarchy, but it's a hierarchy of broader goals or smaller goals fitting in broader goals. And these are linked. So these are all teams. This is a team and it has a goal. This is also a team and it has a great broader goal. This is also a team and it's called the board. And they're also a team and they have maybe the broadest goal of all of us. And these teams are all connected by a role that's called the lead link. So in every team there's one person who has the role to link between the smaller and the broader goal. It's not the same as a manager, and I'll explain a little bit more about it. And then there's more. And there's all kinds of roles, all kinds of stuff that needs to be done to get to those goals of those teams. And it can be anything. So it's a general framework of organizing teams, and what goals that exactly are is probably very different for a team like this than a team that's responsible for, let's say, sales and operations planning, or whatever team. So any team can have their own goals, whatever is necessary to get to your goals. So how does autonomy work? So there's still some hierarchy in there. So what's the difference between, let's say, the traditional way of organizing? Is that circles are given a purpose and accountabilities or clear expectations on what is expected from that team, and maybe also some more concrete goals. So a very inspiring purpose can go hand in hand and with clear goals like let's try to get revenue up with 10% next year or whatever. Have a fulfillment score that's 1% higher. But it stops there. So it means that from outside you can determine, let's say, the what of a team, but you can never determine the how. So how to exactly get to those goals is up to the team themselves. So they determine the best way to fill those goals. They also determine the best way to keep track of that. So they design their own metrics or way of getting track of how good are we progressing towards this goal. They also organize themselves. So nobody's going to tell your team, this is your goal, and the way to get to your goal is by doing this and that and that, and the way to organize it is by having somebody do this, somebody do that, somebody do... No, it's up to the team themselves to organize the best way. Within one role, you do exactly the same thing. You set clear expectations and clear goals, the same as you do towards a team, you do the same thing towards a role. And a role is being filled by, in the end, a person. So you're not telling them every day how to do their work, you're telling them very clearly what you expect them to reach. And then they do the work. So there's no micromanagement in Spark, it's impossible. And it's designed to minimize micromanagement. So how does it work with roles? If you look at organizations, they usually have functions, or functies in the Netherlands. And if you, an example of that, it might be a soccer team. So here is the very successful Dutch women's soccer team. They all have the same function. They're all professional football players. So that's, in many organizations, that's your function. You're a software engineer, you're a business analyst. Congratulations, there's 200 more of you. So how clear is that? You know, what exactly is then expected of your function? So there might be a function profile, but there's no way that your work is exactly the same as all those 100 or 200 other guys and girls that have the same function. So that's why sporting teams always go a step further than only saying, yo, we're with 11 people, we're all professional football players, the goal is very clear, we have to win, we play a game against whatever, Manchester City, it's very easy, let's just go do it and win. Nobody plays the game like that. They always agree on, you know, who's the goalkeeper. Are we playing with 4 people in the front or 3, or, you know, who's on the left side, who's on the right side? So it's not enough to only agree on your function, you have to agree on what your exact role is in the team. So here it's very clear, your role is central defense, and what's expected of you? Well, make sure that the attackers of the opposing team are not getting too close to the goal. And it's okay, if they really get close, then sometimes you just have to be tough a little bit. You know, that's expected of you. So she's doing her role very well. Your role might be, you know, I'm on the outside, on the right side, I'm an attacker. But if you've watched the championships over the summer, then maybe you've noticed that this lady also had some more talents than only run very fast. She was also the person that was really engaging the audience all the time. She was really, really good at it. So she actually fulfilled the second role for the team. And you might call it, it's in Dutch here, I'm sorry, but it translates to, you know, audience engagement. And she's really, really funny doing that. So she has multiple talents, and instead of saying, you know, you're a professional soccer player and you have to play soccer, if you look at roles instead of functions, then you can have, you know, multiple hats on. And it's easier to distinguish between the different talents that you have and try to create, you know, a palette of maybe not one role, but more than one role, where you can really bring most of your talent to the table when you come to work at bol.com. And only working in rigid functions does not offer enough flexibility to get the most talent out of the people that work at bol.com. That's what we believe, and that's why in Spark teams there's no functions, there's roles. And people can have multiple roles, and we're always trying to find the best match between the talent on one hand and the work on the other hand. And there's the second reason to do this. The more clarity you give in this, the the clearer you set expectations on roles and the accountabilities within roles. So what exactly do you expect when somebody has the role audience engagement? The more clarity you give in that, the less you need to manage or even micromanage that person to get clarity. So if football players would only get clarity on, we're a professional football player and that's it, then they'd have to do this all the time. You'd have to run back towards the edge of the field, go to the manager and ask, what do you want me to do now? And then 1 minute later, what do you want me to do now? They have to steer again and again and again. So the more clarity you give on roles and accountabilities, the more autonomy you can and the more trust you can then give. And in football, this is really necessary because you don't have the time to run to the side of the field every 2 minutes. You just have to play the game for at least 45, and then we can do some steering together in the break, and then you just have to be able to autonomously do your work again. It's the exact same in companies. So the more clarity you give on this, the better you can just let people do their work and trust them that they can get it done in a good way. So one of the main things in Spark is to set really, really clear expectations within teams and between the people in teams, so that you can then say, everybody is the boss of their own work and everybody can be trusted to handle their own work. So it goes hand in hand. If you don't offer the clarity, then it's virtually impossible to offer autonomy. So you have to do both. Is it okay so far? Yeah? Questions? So there are some fixed roles within the method, within the way of working. We've already mentioned one, the lead link. It's the link to the broader circle, or the broader purpose, broader goal. They set strategy and priorities, a bit like a product owner in a Scrum team. So it's sort of a management role, but then it's really dressed down to the minimum. So one of the people in the team has to give the clarity on priority and strategy. It doesn't mean that they determine it all by themselves, but they are responsible for making sure that it gets done. Most lead links will do this in a joint effort with the team, but they are expected to get it going.
Do we, you have 58 circles?
Yeah.
Do we know who the lead links are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and you also know who everybody else is and what role they have, and I'll get to that in the end. Yeah. And when teams organize themselves and they get to organize, which roles there are, they don't get to democratically determine who does what role. So it's still up to the, let's say, team lead, or in this case the lead link, to determine who does which role. So if you get back to the example of a soccer team, in a soccer team the team manager is responsible for the strategy, but also responsible for the various roles, or the opstelling. But then also to determine who plays on what position. It's all sort of almost a dictatorship for the manager. In Spark it's different. It's the exact way that you divide yourself up in roles is up to the team. So if you were a soccer team, then it would be a team meeting where you say, we're playing Manchester City, and we've played them 3 times before, and we know that it's smarter to do that with, 4 attackers instead of 3. So it's one of the basic principles in Spark is that the team knows is the best in knowing, what the best way is to organize towards you, because you do the work every day. You're the closest to the goal, to the work, to the knowledge. But it gets a bit messy if you get, people and persons in there. So there's a clear split between, the opstelling. I'm sorry, I don't have the translation. So what roles you want to use, but then you leave it to the team lead, to the lead link to fill those roles. So in the soccer example, the team would determine, we play 4 attackers, 1 goalkeeper, usually do that. And then they go to the team lead and say, this is how we want to play. And you are now responsible for making sure you find the right fit between all the talent that we have, and maybe they have a selection of 22 people, and then you determine who plays what position. But the team determines, which positions there are.
One question, does the lead link also determine the goal of each role? So
No,
to say to the attacker, you have to score goals?
No, that's also the team responsibility.
Okay.
So that's part of the, in Spark it's called governance, and creating a role means that you have to name a role, give it a clear purpose and goal, and clear accountabilities. And that's all part of the opstelling of creating roles.
Yeah.
But the lead link does say to the team, we have to win. And the team decides, okay, well, I will take the defense.
Yeah. And then the lead link is part of the team. So,
Yeah, okay.
so they co-decide, Yeah. Other core role is facilitator. So some of the a group process like this, like deciding on how to play the game, on how to organize yourself, it means that you have a meeting. It means that you get a group process. One of the things that are, let's say, handy in one-on-one management, so you have a one-on-one meeting with your manager, at least that's an easy meeting, because it's only two people, it's not too much discussion. And if you have a really dominant manager, then maybe you don't even have the conversation, you just listen. Think of it all that you want, but at least it's clear and it's easy. If you start to do this in a group with, let's say, 5 or 6 or 10 people, then it just gets harder. It's more messy because it's a group process with like 5 or 6 or 10 people. It's just harder than doing a one-on-one talk. Making decisions with 10 people is just ridiculously hard. So Spark offers a lot of structure to help teams to do that in a very, very efficient way, because we want autonomy. We want people to be able to own their own work. We want people to have a say in these decisions, but we don't want meetings that last 2 hours and 3 hours and just stuff doesn't get done. So we help, the structure helps teams to get this done really, really effectively. One of the important things there is that you appoint and you elect one of your team members as a facilitator. And this is the person that makes sure that meetings are efficient. In Scrum you have a similar thing, it's called, I think, Scrum Master, the person who helps the team work within the framework, within the method. And you can trust this person to help the team use that in the best way they can. In Spark there's a facilitator role and there's also a secretary role. The facilitator you might see as sort of the chairman or chairwoman of a meeting. So they chair the meeting, and the secretary is responsible for making sure that we have really, really clear next steps and actions. And we'll get to that in a bit when we go into the exact meetings. Really shortly, there's a very important reason that we split this, that there is a lead link apart from a facilitator. You see the same thing in public organization, what you call in government structures. This is the chairman of the Tweede Kamer, the Dutch parliament, and these are two very sad-looking guys from the VVD. And there, this is the Dutch prime minister, so he's the Dutch lead link, you might say, but he's not the chairman of the meeting. And there's a very important reason why that is the case, because if he would be, then the next question might be, does this guy get any time to say anything at all? This is, I don't know his first name, Rafael, looks like. He's the youngest Tweede Kamer member in the Netherlands. He looks a bit older, but he's only 25, I think. He's for D66. And D66, our prime minister is not from D66. And this guy might have, lots of interesting things to say, but does he get any, speaking time? And in the Dutch parliament, we make sure that there's room for every one of the members to be able to stand up and speak and contribute. So they have to make it objective, and you cannot have, so that's why there's an objective, onpartijdig chairman of the parliament. Well, we're not exactly doing, Dutch government here with our teams, but the same principle goes. We want everybody to be able to contribute. So why is it called Spark? And what are sparks? When I try to explain it, I always use this picture. A spark is like a spark plug in a car. It's a vonkje. It's the way to start a car. It's the beginning of something. So spark is a new sort of general term that we've more or less invented to describe, on the one hand, fresh new ideas that we might have to start something new. So new ideas, but also it might also symbolize the friction, the problems that we encounter in doing our day-to-day work. And actually we don't really care if something is an opportunity or a challenge, or an idea or a problem, or an issue, or it doesn't really matter. We want to have one generic term. We all see it as the same thing, as the start of something. So let's say maybe you recognize, going to the coffee machine somewhere during a busy work day, and you need to let off some steam. Some stuff is, I don't know, not really going well at work that day, and you meet a colleague, and then you start sort of gossiping about, this and that is not really going well in the department. Wouldn't it be cool if we actually did, I don't know. I've had countless of conversations like that at the coffee machine. Maybe you have as well. The point is that either you have a nice new idea, or you have to let off some steam because you're a bit frustrated about something that is happening. The point is, if you let off the steam, you do it at the coffee machine, and then the coffee is filled, and you say, well, nice talking to you, and just go back to work, and then that's that. Then you've more or less, swept your problem under the carpet. And whether it's a problem or an idea, it's sort of it has the energy of the start of something. You can actually use that to get, one step further, to sort of fuel the change or the improvement that you might have. So in Spark, we say this is the most important thing. The most important thing is that we have enough fuel in our organization to drive continuous improvement of everything. And everybody in every role, every day in your work, you always encounter problems, issues. You have new ideas all the time. The thing is, the big trick of having a growing company and be effective and stay innovative is that you be able to still make use of that fuel every day in all teams for everyone. And that's why the Spark structure is really, really rigged to make sure that you can go to a meeting and bring all those ideas and bring all those problems, that we help each other to always take that to the next step and make sure that it's continuously fueling improvements. Instead of letting it go at the coffee machine or sweeping it under the rug, we want to have those ideas. We want to have those problems because we know that's the beginning of something better. So everybody does work in clear roles in teams, and they encounter these sparks every day. So it's challenges, it's issues, it's opportunity, it doesn't matter. All of this. You're the boss of your own work, remember? So most of the time, you'll probably be able to do something with your own ideas or try to solve your own problems. And you have the autonomy to do that. But it's not always possible to solve everything by yourself. There's a lot of challenges or ideas that you cannot, move forward on all by yourself. That's why you can bring it to a meeting. Spark teams have two types of meetings, and some of them combine it into one. Then it's just one following the other. And they're split into tactical meetings, so that's about the work itself, and you can bring your sparks to that meeting, and then the team, you can ask the team for help to bring that to the next step. And then the spark is what goes into the meeting, and the next steps, so actions, new projects, new goals, clarity to move forward is what comes out of the meeting. And that's on sort of on a tactical level. So you don't do the work inside of the meeting, but you make sure that you have 1 hour every week with the team. Everybody can bring their stuff in, their sparks in, and then when you go out of the meeting after that hour, everybody has the clarity to move forward in a very, very productive way. So you help each other to be able to get to those next steps. You can do the same thing, not on the work itself, but on the organization. Your ideas on how to better organize, or maybe there's a piece of work that always, ends up between two people and it never gets done because, we sort of fail to make somebody really clearly responsible for this part of work. If you have an idea on that, so let's not play with 4 attackers, but maybe we should play with 3 attackers. That's also a spark. That's a spark not on the work itself, but on how to organize the work, and how to agree on, on how to define the work. You bring that to a separate meeting. Most Spark teams have a meeting like this every week because you usually have a lot of work and there's always a lot, to clarify on the work itself. New teams have meetings like this a bit more often in the beginning, and then when you get that clarity on organization, then you do it once every, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. So that most of the times you have tactical meetings a bit more than that you have governance meetings. Who's been in a Spark meeting already? Yeah. Wow. How many times?
3 times now?
Times.
1 time. 3.
20. You already know everything.
5 seconds.
Wow. Well, this should be really recognizable for you then. This is the structure of a Spark tactical meeting. So we go a little bit more in detail on how does Spark method help you to have an effective meeting where you handle the work and the Sparks. So Spark tactical meeting starts with the check-in. Everybody comes running from, whatever other meeting, everybody's preoccupied with whatever in their head, and you want to have a really effective meeting in 1 hour. So it helps to get everybody on the same page at the beginning of the meeting. So you do a very clear check-in, everybody gets a short opportunity to say what's on their mind. It's a bit of a psychology trick to get people focused in the meeting. It's nothing more than that. It's a bit of a trick to have a clear and good start of the meeting. Then we try to get in sync in the team. So we have a clear goal. We're trying to reach our goal. How are we doing as a team? How do we know if we're doing well or not so well? So we need a couple of steps to get everybody on the same page on how we're faring as a team. We do that first of all by looking at a checklist. So what are constantly returning actions that we have to do every week, and did everybody do their thing? So in some teams this might be, I know it's also a way of building habits. So I have a nice example. There's one team at customer service who want to visit our contact centers a bit more. So they have an item on their checklist that goes, have you been to one of our contact centers in the last week? Everybody just says check or no check. So you either did it or you didn't. And it helps them to remember, we've agreed that we want to do this a bit more. And it's only that. It's only checking whether you've done it or not. And some teams have, maybe there's some Excel sheet that needs to be updated every week, or there's some, most teams have some returning work. So it's a very, very short way to check whether that work has been done, yes or no. So the facilitator only asks if everybody has done their returning action. So it's really fast, only a couple of minutes. Then we go a little bit more in depth into how are we going towards a goal. And then we get data and metrics in there. So we want to have an objective view on how we are going towards our goal. And we're not looking only at the work itself, but we also try to look at what do we have in terms of reports or graphs or outside figures that give us a sense of how we're doing. Most teams at Bol.com have an abundance of data and reports that they can use to get a clear picture on how they're going. So if you look at logistics, it's always, the fulfillment report, how many packages did we do yesterday? There's a lot of that information. Commercial teams have a bunch of information on revenue, on same aim. We have a lot of information on customer satisfaction. So this is a very good way to get the team quickly into sync on how are we doing. So you have, maybe 5 or 10 minutes to have a click a quick look at those figures that help give every team member a sense of how you're going. And then there's project updates. So every role in the team, every team member has, some work to do. And they all define goals for themselves. So in a Spark team, you might see a project board that has a couple of personal, let's say, mini milestones per person or per role in the team. And typically we say, try to set a goal for yourself in, let's say, maybe 4 weeks. So you're responsible for, I don't know, you're responsible for in your role, quick example.
Forecast the rest of the year.
All right.
The number of shipments.
What's your most important goal in the next 4 weeks for your part of the work?
Well, determine which is the balance between the Veerweg site that we have and the Pakketweg site that we have.
All right. And if you had to define that as a sort of a deliverable, what do you want to have done after 4 weeks?
Deliver the how do you call it? The shipments per warehouse per day in a percentage.
Okay.
That's the deliverable.
All right. So that's a good example of a project. In Spark, a deliverable or a milestone is called a project. And we call it a project because it's different from an action. Because if you put this on your action list, it's not really something that you can just do if you have like 30 minutes tomorrow. There's probably multiple steps involved. Maybe you can't even do it all by yourself alone. So it's sort of a mini project.
Yeah.
It's not a really big, large thing. But as soon as something becomes a bit more complicated than just one action that you can do in, let's say, maybe 30 minutes when you have some time, then we call it a project. And then we try to define it as an outcome, as your desired outcome. What do you want to have reached when this is done? It helps you to get the clarity on where do you want to be after 4 weeks. And maybe this is one of your important things to do in the next 4 weeks. Maybe it's not the only thing. You have maybe 2 or 3 more. And everybody in the team has a couple of those, goals that you want to reach in the next couple of weeks. These are all put on a project board in a Spark team. You give a quick update to the rest of the team, so you provide the transparency to your teammates on how you're going. So you have this clear goal. You want to have those percentages after 4 weeks. Next week you can give an update. You say, well, I did the first analysis. I had a meeting. I don't know. I've made the Excel sheet, but I still need to fill it. Whatever. That's your update. And I expect it to be ready in, I don't know, next week or maybe 2 weeks. Or it can be, I'm a bit stuck in this project. And I expected to have it done after 4 weeks, but I'm running into some trouble. Maybe I need some help. It's also your opportunity to ask the rest of the team for help. So graphs and metrics and data to get a sense of what your status is as a team, and also the work itself in terms of goals, and doing a short update per person on how you're going with your personal goals. It's meant to get in sync on how you're doing as a team. It also has a second purpose. Usually it triggers some discussion, some questions, some new ideas, some problems because maybe you're a little bit stuck. Maybe somebody, maybe one of the team members is not going as fast as we wanted, and somebody else is getting a little bit in trouble because of that. So in the first half of the meeting, it's a very, very good way to help trigger new ideas and make clear what issues and small problems are that are there at the team at the time. And you can put them on the agenda. These are sparks. So the second half of the meeting is meant to process the sparks that every team member can have. And some of them you just take to the meeting because you've already encountered them in the week before. And what really helps most people is to make sure you have a small list on your telephone maybe. Every time you have a spark, you have a new idea, you run into some problem, just put it very shortly in a list, and you go to the meeting, get your phone out, and you have, 4 items that are important to address in the meeting. It's a very quick tip that I have for everyone who goes to a Spark meeting regularly. I For the second part, maybe they get triggered in the first half of the meeting, and that's all right. And so together, you make a list of the sparks that you have as a team. So some of them were already there, and everybody took them on their phone maybe to the meeting. Some of them were triggered in the first half of the meeting, and then you get a list. So Spark meeting doesn't have a fixed agenda beforehand. It gets generated on the fly, together, and the input is the fuel, all the ideas, all the problems that you have with the team members. Typically this is a list of somewhere between 10, 20 points, most teams. Sometimes a bit more. It's the job of the facilitator to make sure that all those points are addressed. All sparks need to be addressed in the meeting. So if you have a meeting of 1 hour, then typically you use, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes for this first half, and then you have 40 minutes for the second half. That's sort of a rule of thumb that I use if I facilitate a meeting. Usually 40 minutes is enough to address all the sparks that you have. So let's say you have 20 sparks. It means only 2 minutes per spark. So there's no room to go in depth exactly into the details of that issue. It's only meant to get the clarity on, okay, so this is your idea or problem. How can we make sure that the work progresses in a good way after the meeting? What do we need to agree on? What do we need to clarify? So the output of addressing a spark might be, a spark might be solved by just answering a question. It can take only maybe 1 minute. Or it's, I need an action from one of my team members. So we need to formulate an action, and we have put a name behind it, and then it's your action, okay. Maybe it's not really clear what action needs to be undertaken, but we can set a new goal. In 4 weeks I want to be here, so we can formulate a new project. Maybe we have a spark, but we cannot solve it within our team, so our lead link has to take that spark, take it to the broader circle where it can be addressed there. So it's the clarification of work, making sure that everybody knows, everybody gets in sync, all actions are clear, so that when you go out of the meeting, everybody knows, what do we need to do as a team, who has what action, make sure the work progress is really, really clear. So you don't actually do all kinds of, content discussions within the meeting. If you need that, if you need, elaborate brainstorm sessions with all of the team, that's okay, but then you just need to plan a separate meeting for that. Spark Tactical meeting is really, really designed to help you clarify the work so that you can, in the 39 hours that you have outside of this 1 hour, you can do the work as efficiently as a team as is possible. Score teams have they combine governance and tactical meetings in one. So they typically have meetings that last 90 minutes instead of 60. They call decision making, they call that ping pong. It's decision making on on governance, so on new roles or making changes to roles. They handle that in a separate 30 minutes of their meeting. So they don't have separate governance meetings. They sort of put them right after the tactical meeting. They also use that step to do decision making on, let's say, strategic issues. So where you really, really don't only want to give one of the team members an action or a project, where you really want to decide with the entire team on, are we going left or are we going right? And then you use this structure to do decision making. I have some extra details on that. Every Spark meeting ends in a closing round, and it's meant to shortly review the meeting. How was it going? What can we do better next time? It helps the facilitator and the secretary and all the team members to learn from how the meeting was this week and make sure we do a little bit better next week. So you get a learning loop going.
Is that also something that will be put on the checklist review for the next meeting, so okay, this is what went wrong last week?
Yeah, so sometimes what happens sometimes is that inside of the closing somebody does a sort of retro or review of the meetings, and
I
would be much better if we would do this or that next time. And then then it's sort of, it's almost a spark where you can define a next action to. So sometimes your idea or problem maybe should have been addressed on the spark list, but it's sort of now on
Yeah.
afterburner, can you say it like that? Probably not. And it doesn't matter. You can still define an action and have the secretary. You know. Let's say we have 4 minutes. Questions that you guys have right now. I don't think we have all the time to go into the details of the ping pong process.
Yeah. So at the project updates, you only have short-term goals, and how do the longer-term goals fit in?
Yeah. Let's see if I can quickly skip to go a little bit in detail into projects. This is a screenshot of Glassroad. Glassroad is the tool that Spark teams use. So in the meeting, it's usually on the beamer, and outside of the meeting, everybody has access to the tool. It contains, among other things, all the roles and accountabilities are registered in Glassroad. All the circles, so you can look into other teams. It's completely transparent. Every team has a project board, and here you see a role name. This is another role, and here you see projects. It's like a Scrum board with post-it notes. And a project can have, a couple of statuses. A current project means that you're working on it right now. The team can expect you to move forward on this project in the next, week, 2 weeks. Sometimes a project cannot move forward because you're waiting on somebody else, so you're sort of blocked. And you move into the waiting column. It turns red, and you're waiting on something. But it's also important to provide, that transparency. Projects that are done are of course great. You can just let your team know this goal has been reached. And some projects are not active yet. They're future projects. So it's one way of keeping track on longer term goals is to put them in the future column. So you have goals, but they're not exactly goals in the next 4 weeks. They're goals for a little bit further down the road. One of the tricks that you can use is to put them here. So you have, the main focus is on the work that's progressing right now, but you still, are able to keep track on, the goals that you have after that. Another way of doing this is to make a continuous link between the project board that you have here and the strategy plan that you have for a team. So most teams write a one-page strategy plan called OGSM. And OGSM contains usually about 4 to 6 strategies with a couple of what's called action plans. And those action plans are usually milestones, exactly like this, goals that you want to reach, but they usually take, 3 months, 6 months, maybe even 12 months. So they're not, small and concrete enough to talk about every week, and it doesn't really help you to move forward in a very effective way, but it is sort of a stake in the ground on where you want to be after, let's say, a year. So some teams link these post-its or these projects to their OGSM goals by using a label or something like that. So you can match it with your strategy plan all the time. It takes a lot of discipline to do that all the time, or you just put it in the final column. That's a way to help. So we Spark coaches try to help teams to make the link between the OGSM and the project board, and also between the OGSM and the roles and responsibilities. So we have a strategy plan. This is what we all want to do in the coming year. Okay, so who's responsible for what? How do we make sure we are organized in the best way to make this strategy plan happen together? So OGSM and Spark can go hand in hand very, very well. There's a training on Workplace. If you go into the Spark community group, you can find the training on how to use OGSMs in a Spark team, or how to optimally use Spark to make sure you get the most out of your OGSM. Other questions?
Yes. I have had 3 Spark meetings, so I'm a Spark baby, and the colleague over there has had 20 Spark meetings.
Or more, yes.
Almost. So, do you detect a learning
Yeah.
between the babies and more mature Sparkers
Yeah, nice question.
within
Yeah.
the method? Look, because I would love to check in their Spark meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, we have, I typically use this slide, but there's, maybe it answers your question a little bit. So what we typically do in new teams is we offer on-the-job Spark coaching in the first 3 months.
Mhm.
But people who are newly joining Bullet.com might join a team that has been using Spark for a lot of time, and you don't have an active Spark coach in the meeting anymore. So that's more different. If you start new with the entire team, then most of the time you get help the first 3 months from a Spark coach in your meetings. So you have a dedicated coach 1 or 2 hours every week. So that's really helpful, of course. So it takes about 2 to 3 months to get the basics of the method in most cases. And then we've been doing this for 2 years now. What we see most of the times is that it takes about a year, half year to a year, for teams to really get proficient at it and start to get the most out of it. Because a lot of it is really new type of thinking. It's roles instead of functions. It's autonomy. It's clear responsibilities. It's at Bullet.com a lot of the times we don't take the time to really clarify what we expect of each other. It's just let's just go get the work done. So Spark, it really offers you a structure, but you have to use it as a team, and it's something that just takes practice. So just it really takes some time to really get the most out of it and get some new insights. So don't worry if you feel this is taking a bit. That's okay. I think in most teams it really takes a couple of months to get really comfortable in it. The tactical meeting is in most cases feels comfortable, I think, very quickly. Governance meetings and really doing decision making faster takes a little bit more time, takes more practice. You usually don't do it every week, so it also takes longer to practice. If you have the feeling that maybe there's a lot of new people entering the team and they've had a Spark coach in the past, but maybe it's time for some freshing up, something you can always send an email to spark@bullet.com or to me, or leave a post on our workplace group. We have a large group of internal Spark coaches, and we are there to help teams, not only new teams, but if you need some freshing up, or you have some questions, need some help, really please feel free. We are there to help teams in any way. Yeah, you can find this this presentation also on the workplace group. So I think everybody who's in a Spark team is automatically a member of the Spark community group on workplace. So if you have a few minutes this evening, have a quick look on that workplace group. There's a lot of information there. There's also a link there to our conference page. So we have sort of an intranet page with all kinds of information. This presentation, reference cards, introduction videos on how to use Glassrock, all kinds of stuff that you can, just do easily do by yourself if you have like 10 minutes somewhere. We have an email address, spark@bullet.com. There's always somebody answering. So if you have any questions, feel free to send us an email. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.